So the way we're going to do this is I'm going to go through just a short list of questions that we have about fuels treatment effectiveness monitoring. I have to bring it up here. Sorry about that. I think I accidentally just turned it off. Okay, here we go. And we're going to do it with the regional fuels folks, Carol, Bert, Ruby, and Robin, and myself. And if anybody else has anything they want to jump in on as well too, we can do that. And then Carol, you got the recording going. Thank you. Appreciate that. All right, so we just have 5 questions, so we'll get started. And the first question is, what is a fuels treatment effectiveness report? And how does a fuels treatment effectiveness report differ from the FTEM process, the fuels treatment effectiveness monitoring process? And I will say real quick, season 1, session 6, which is available on YouTube, that Kendra put on about FTEM is available. So if you want to go and watch something about FTEM, it is currently available. But how's FTER different? Who wants to take a stab at that one?
So I can start. So the
All right, Rob.
the report is where you summarize what happened actually on the ground, where the FTEM reporting, you're entering into the database. So with the report, a lot of times we like it to be short and concise with some pictures. Kendra came up with a template, right? Do we have that to pop into the chat? And the WO definitely likes pictures. And when it gets sent up to the WO, they show it to Congress. They report out the presidential briefing once a week, and they say, hey, look at this cool thing that happened, or potentially didn't happen, depending on how your fuels treatments responded to wildfire. So, and then there is, I'm not going to go on that tangent. Does anyone else have anything to add? I was going to tangent and it was going to confuse some people, so I stopped myself.
All right, that's cool. Pulled short. Carol, go ahead. I think you had something.
Well, fuel treatment effectiveness monitoring is required by policy, and it used to be housed in its own database, but now it's in IFTDIS, the Interagency Fuel Treatment Decision Support System, I think is what the final S is for. And it's 4 questions that are required whenever a wildfire intersects a fuel treatment. And usually we only know, like the database only knows it intersected a fuel treatment for the Forest Service is because it's in the FACTS database. So I wanted to make sure that was said, and then I'll hand it to my coworkers to see if they want to keep adding to it.
So some of the things that you could see in the FTEM database is duplicates of the same treatment. And so you need to go in there and clean that out. And Kendra can help you with that if you need help walking through that process. And the database, because it does pull from facts, crappy facts data has the repercussions of crappy FTEM data. So that's why we really do push good facts entry, because a lot of different places pull that data for reporting. But Ruby, you were going to say something and I cut you off.
Yep. Still speaking to the FTEM process, policy does identify that needs to be done for treatments that have occurred within the last 10 years. So that time frame keeps rolling as we go into future fire years, but it doesn't mean that we couldn't use the fuels treatment effectiveness report to highlight where maybe a fire had a success when it interacted a treatment that had been created on the landscape prior to that 10-year time frame.
So, unless anybody else has anything to add to that, what I'm hearing then is that FTEM, the monitoring process that's in IFTDIS, is required by policy and has some timeframes and it has some specific questions. But this fuels treatment effectiveness reporting thing is kind of something you can kind of decide to do on your own when you want to maybe have more elaborate, more full explanation of what's happening, maybe some pictures and that sort of thing. Would you guys agree with that? Is that what I'm hearing?
100%.
All right, awesome, cool.
Yes.
Well, in that regard, then, what are some components of an FTER report, an effectiveness report that you guys have seen? I know that we have the template. Maybe we could go through a little bit of that. However, who wants to take a stab at that one?
Sure.
Go for it,
Oh,
Carol.
okay. Hopefully you guys can see we uploaded 2 copies of the same thing into our chat here.
Sorry.
And that's okay. And we have found that sometimes getting these files off the chat is hard after the fact. So let us know if you can't get it later. And this template goes through, the who, what, when, where. So I'm going to be looking at it on my side screen here while we talk, or I could share my screen, whatever you'd like, Stephen. And
yeah, sure. Yeah, if you want
okay.
to, we can share. We can do a little share, no problem.
All right. Loading it up. All right. You guys got it?
Yeah, perfect. We can see it. That's great. Thank you. Oh, I
Yep.
can see all the comments too.
I
That's
think they
okay.
were there on purpose.
Yep.
Oh,
You
okay.
you can close them if you want, but they're just there to, in case you were like, what do I put here? Your name of your fire, and we're giving you like the NIFC format kind of thing, California 2024, the line fire or something.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I got you.
No problem. And then we're asking what ranger district, what forest are you on? Some of you are on awesome fires that are multiple ranger districts, multiple, landowner agencies, maybe you have a park service, forest service fire or something. Who was involved? Let's see. Let me click on it, see what it tells you. So lists all the cooperators and partners that were involved in the project, not meaning who's putting out the fire necessarily, but more who helped make the fuel treatment happen. Did you have a funding source? Did you have a nonprofit help make it happen? All those kinds of things. So what else did she write? It could be a community wildfire protection plan was part of it, a watershed group, fire safe council. Or for our internal slang, we use force account, and was it internal Forest Service money? What was the purpose of the treatment of the project? When you get to our large wildfires, you'll see there's a lot of different facts interactions or intersections with the fire footprint, and not all of them are probably about fuel treatments or about vegetation management. So we're really trying to highlight that part for this report. But when I've done this before through a huge facts data set, was it just power line maintenance, or, was it just a grazing allotment or something that wasn't purposefully for reducing vegetation? Funding source can be a big deal, especially while we're working with our partners, such as like CAL FIRE getting a CCI grant. What else did she write here? Was it part of a national project? Our Joint Chiefs projects, our wildfire crisis strategy. We had CFLRPs there for a while. So did the funding come from something like that? I've seen this outlined in a table, what was done and when, because maybe there's multiple fuel treatment projects that are involved. So looking at something from 10 years ago versus 2 years ago, or maybe it was a compilation of different actions over different years. Anticipated outcome. So this is sort of getting at some of the questions that are mandatory within IFTDIS, but did it change fire behavior? Did it decrease fire behavior? Did it provide for an anchor point for suppression actions? Did it maintain desired resource conditions? That kind of thing. In some of our examples, we've seen people overlay with the ravage data or the MTBS data to look at severity over, the entire fire footprint. And that might help be a good surrogate. I'm not sure the right word here, but a good stand-in for like what on a large scale, what was the severity of the fire, especially within your fuel treatment boundary. Okay, so here's for you to do a description of, this fuel break was used as a suppression line, or this fuel break was used just to access, the Division X area or something like that. Was the treatment passive or actively leveraged? Then lastly here, we're encouraging you to put pictures of any kind. This reminds me to take pictures of our fuel treatments, before the wildfire comes, especially from your favorite turnouts or, vantage points, and then often putting pictures after the fact, they really tell a story, as we all know. And then we encourage you to put, who wrote this and a follow-up contact. As you know, you all get pressure from media or just local cooperators when you have a even a small fire happen in your area and they want to know more. So this is really highlighting good work of potentially decades of people that was put into this fuel treatment. And I think I'll pause there. And there's definitely more here in the appendices that we could talk about.
Okay. Well, we can let some folks explore that too. Thanks for going through that, Carol. So that's great. That she put that template together. We'll provide some examples. I think here what I've seen is they've been all over the place. They've all been good in their own way, and they've met, I think, the need for the report. But I think some consistency might provide a lot of value. So that's awesome. Anybody else before we move on? Cool. Thanks for going over that. Well, I guess to that end, who should be writing that fuels treatment effectiveness report, do we think? Is that fire staff, or is that natural resource staff, or what do you think, Ruby? Do you want to take that one on?
Yep. I think, in generally we can all agree that these should be written with people with some of the firsthand knowledge of not only the interaction, but perhaps the intent behind those and the work that went into creating those fuels treatments or planning and helping, hopefully fuels people, right? It's the hope. We do have a lot of folks out there that may have some context and some information toward it, but these success stories, the way they're framed up in this example as well, is, it really deserves the context and the perspective of the people who not only, were part of the planning and implementation, but also the operational experience that was had when the fire interacted that treatment.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Awesome, Ruby. Robin, did you have something to add?
Yeah, and it helps to get it done sooner than later, because a lot of memories fade. It kind of becomes what did happen, so the sooner you can get it done, the better. It's helpful. And if you need help with that, Kendra is the contact for that, and she can help you, walk you through it, and give you some advice about what to write up. Definitely sooner than later.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's always best to try to get those things done when you remember them. Awesome. Thanks, guys. All right. Okay. So, I guess actually, again, carrying on from that point, if you're going to have it written and going to do it after that, where should it go? Should it just sit on your shelf, or is there a place that it should be placed to be archived and shared? What are our thoughts on that?
Well, as we've said, Kendra Fallon is our main point of contact here for Region 5 and the regional office. So please send it to her. Let's see. So there are other kinds of grassroots narratives. You don't have to follow our template, or you might have someone in your shop or at your forest that, has already got this going. We'd still like them to cross by Kendra Fallon's desk and our fire public affairs officer, public information officer, Adrienne Friedman. We could put her name in the chat as well, but she is also collecting all of these stories. And there are two main pathways for sort of rounding up all these stories on the regional level, and then often they're shared more broadly on the Washington office level. And I wanted to comment earlier about, does it have to only be success stories? And maybe I'm a spicy person, and I'm not perfect, either are our fuel treatments. So I think it's okay sometimes to say, hey, it worked great, on the north side, but the south side, something didn't happen, and really just talk about that in terms of lessons learned. Or I've done that before, comparing treatments of this one got, is 15 years old, didn't do the same thing as something 9 years old, and being willing to also highlight lessons learned is maybe a better word than a failure area. But as you all know, our fuel treatments aren't all created with the same outcome. We didn't know what fire was going to test them. So that kind of thing.
Yeah. I think that's really important to point out. And it does get to that where do these belong? Where do they get used in the future, right? And pointing out that the template that Kendra created was pretty specific to the current ask that came out this summer, fall timeframe, to really answer toward the success stories of those interactions specific to those WO questions. But I'm sure we've all seen, a few of these on the shelf from past experiences, and how can we use them with the context of, like you said, Carol, did it work? Did it not? And how as fuels folks, can we try to plan for improved effectiveness and future treatments? I have seen some of these really like quick short form templates get put together, and then there's a note there on the bottom like a forthcoming full fuels treatment effectiveness report would be coming or produced in the future. And sometimes those things are helped come together from local fuel staff or with information brought together from personality like FEMOs and things like that maybe out and about on larger fire incidents when they occur. But the context for the less than successful stories are really important for us to go and plan forward for additional treatments in our future.
Also, don't discount the fires that were only like 2 acres, but it stopped in a fuels treatment. They really want to hear about those small fires inside a fuels treatment. It doesn't have to be like the big raging fire came up the hill and it laid down and it was a success. Like if it stayed 1 acre because it was inside of a fuels treatment, they really want to know that too. And like Jim Manakis really loves those ones. He would love, yeah, he would love to see those reports too. So even if it's just a small little fire, make sure you write that up and document that.
Yeah, that's an important point too. I think it doesn't always. There's you see a lot of fuel treatment effectiveness reports that are like I was just looking through my little archive, and I think I saw one on the Calder fire, a giant fire. But I can think of a lot of examples of where we had fires start even within fuels treatments and not go anywhere. And you're talking a 10 by 10 spot that landed in a fuel break, and I always argue like that's just as important because it was the fire that didn't happen and because of the fuels treatment. So yeah, thanks for making that point, Robin. Great. All right, well that's great. Talk about distribution. So last question I guess I had for you guys was where can we find some examples of reports that have been written? Do we have any with the new template already? I mean, I've got a few. Is there a known distribution hub? I looked at the Fuels Community of Practice page. I didn't see anything there. So just wondering if we know where folks can see some examples or what the thoughts are with that. Sorry, the sun's getting in my face here.
Carol's working on a SharePoint site.
Yeah.
Is that the answer? Working on a SharePoint? Yeah.
Well, there's
ahead,
quite a few out there that are, internet searchable, especially if you're going to a fire from outside your area and you're just trying to learn anything you can about it. We could put some here in the chat as well for some examples. Like the couple that came out this fall and this summer were great.
Yeah.
What was I going to say? So we're working on a SharePoint for everyone to be able to access with some different folders in it. And one of them was going to be this topic specifically. So it's in beta stage. We're still testing it, making sure it'll work.
Awesome. Well, maybe we can, like you said, maybe we can put some files of some older ones. There's been some really good ones that have come out. I remember one that came out from the Klamath, like, I don't even know, 6 times weird, but 5-6 years ago or so. I think it was written by a fire effects monitor. One of you guys made the point earlier about the use of FEMOs. I think that's actually even a subject for one of our fuel schools in the future is the use of fire effects monitors and the value of them. So, all right, great, cool, guys. Did you have anything else to add to it? That was the last question I had for you. I just wanted to expose what fuels treatment effectiveness reports are and what some of the power of them can be for sharing some of the good work that we're doing out there and where people see value in them. I guess if you don't have anything else, I would open up to any questions to the crowd that might exist out there, if there are any. I have a hard time. Look at the chat, looking for arms raised.